Today, we are going to be discussing the different causes of obesity. It kind of sounds weird to people probably because everybody thinks obesity is just from eating too much, but it's not. We talked about this before. Obesity looks the same to everybody on the outside, but it actually is a lot different on the inside depending on how you got there. So I'm going to give you a list of a few different causes of obesity and explain them in some detail, and tell you which ones are sort of more common and less common. And it's really sort of important to know these things because it really will dictate what you think, or what I think, or what your provider might think is the best way to treat it. Because obesity treatment is obesity prevention. And in this case, if you already have obesity, what we're preventing is the sequelae, or the things that happen to you if you have obesity, like your knees hurt, or you get diabetes, or you have asthma, or sleep apnea, or something like that. That's what we're gonna talk about. So the rarest form of obesity is something called monogenic obesity. And people often think that their child or that they have something going on with their genes, and specifically one or two genes, because they just don't understand how they got the way they are. But monogenic is actually really quite rare, and we don't even really do genetic testing for it that often. But it's basically like if you have one gene, and there are certain genes that we know, if you have a mutation or a defect in that one gene, you develop obesity. And you usually develop it really young, so 4 years old, 5 years old, or even younger. In fact, I have a family that has a mutation, and I did surgery for one of the kids when that kid was age 4, believe it or not. There was another kid, similar gene problem, who I didn't do surgery at that young, and then between ages 4 and 7, that kid gained like 100 or more pounds, and I made that mistake once, but I didn't make it the second time. So the first time I waited, and that was a mistake. The second time, didn't make that mistake. So anyway, that's rare. You don't really need to know that too much. It's unlikely that you have that if you're watching this video. But there is something called polygenic obesity. So mono means one, poly means more than one. You might know what a polygon is. What polygenic obesity usually means is that people have defects to more than one gene that all play a role in regulating your appetite or your hunger and your satiety, which satiety just means how full you get, or whether you feel that sense of fullness. Because weirdly, some people don't. It's like kind of hard to comprehend that people eat and never feel full. But you can imagine yourself, if you ate and never felt full, you would keep eating because you feel like your brain's telling you you're hungry all the time. So what are you gonna do? Polygenic obesity is probably the most common form of childhood obesity, although there are lots of genes that we don't even know about that may be involved. So there's this other form of obesity that people call environmental obesity, which is when you don't have a known genetic defect. But I don't actually like to use that term, and so I don't use that term because I actually think it's all polygenic for the most part, because the science behind the genes just isn't there yet. And maybe that's where most adults fall, polygenic obesity or environmental obesity. Then there's this really unfortunate group of people who have what's called hypothalamic obesity. And that is a very, again, rare, but the hypothalamus is the part of your brain that actually controls your hunger and your satiety. So if you need surgery because you have a tumor in your hypothalamus, or let's say you get radiation to your hypothalamus because of a tumor, you actually will end up with obesity even if you didn't have any other predisposing factors before then. So that's, again, rare, but just something to know about. And so obesity itself is actually, some people say, between 40 and 70% heritable, meaning can be passed on from your parents to you. 40 to 70%. So let's just say half, at least half of obesity is inherited through your genes. That's another piece of the puzzle that we really just don't talk about that much. This is just a thumbnail sketch of the different causes of obesity, and your genes are definitely part of the equation. But your behavior and your environment do play a role, and we're going to talk about that next. And that's a field called epigenetics. We'll get into that later. So again, most important thing to remember, and we keep hammering it home, is that obesity is a disease and not a lifestyle choice. If you like what you're hearing, drop some comments, even send me some questions. I'll get back to you. Share with your friends or anybody else you think that needs to hear this information. Subscribe to the channel, watch the other videos. Stay engaged. Let me know. I'm here for you. Next time, see you there.